Suonatore, and today I'm going to be looking at some different types of medieval hats. So, in the medieval times, people wore hats a lot. It was a very important part of the fashion of the day, much more so than today. If you weren't wearing a hat, you weren't considered fully dressed, and so you wouldn't be wanting to go around town or go around your business when you're not fully dressed. A lot of it had to do with modesty of the time and social parameters and such, like how married women in many places, they wouldn't want to go around town with their hair down because it was frowned upon, generally. To be seen in public with your hair down or uncovered, both for men and women, was a quite embarrassing thing you do your best to avoid if you had any decency. Sometimes certain professions wore specific types of hats. For example, bakers and millers, they wore bag hats very often, and that's where we get our modern chef's hat from. And farmers and laborers and people who worked out in the sun would wear these big wide-brimmed straw hats. Bishops certainly had their own type of hat, and in many places Jews were forced to wear yellow hats just to identify them as Jews. Hunters and outdoorsmen also wore their own particular kind of hat, as can be attested to by medieval art and, indeed, most depictions of Robin Hood. So the first hat I'll be looking at is one of the most common. You'll have no doubt seen it before. This is an arming cap, or a padded coif, or something along those lines. If I put it on real quick, see it fits quite snugly. It's pretty well padded, designed to go underneath some sort of helmets, but more often underneath a male coif. Now this is technically armor, but if you imagine a non-padded version, you get a linen coif. This is an incredibly common hat for all rungs of medieval society, worn for over 1,000 years in one form or another, from the Viking Age to even like the 20th century. Baby caps, if you've ever seen those, are very similar to that sort of style. It's a simple cap designed to keep your hair in there and to keep your scalp just a bit warmer. Very often in various modern depictions, you'll see this kind of cap depicted with the cord just undone and hanging down off the sides of the head, just wobbling there willy-nilly. And that would be like having your shoelaces untied nowadays. You would almost always have it done up, and I've never seen any manuscript to suggest otherwise, unless you're about to take it off or have just put it on. The next one is more interesting. This is a hat well featured in various depictions of Robin Hood, Peter Pan, in Dr. Seuss' book, The 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, if you know of that one. You may have seen this hat before and wondered what it is called. Wonder no longer, my friend, for it is called a bycocket. This is the hat that I mentioned was popular among woodsmen and hunters. It is, in function at least, the medieval equivalent to the baseball cap. It has the brim just in the front so that it shades you from the sun and doesn't have a bunch of extra brim wasted around the rest of your head, keeping it quite light. You can put a macaroni in your cap, as I have done with a big iridescent green rooster feather here. Or you can, take it out. You can pin it up or line the inside of it, or, like the baseball cap, you can wear it backwards if you want people to think you're from the medieval hood. Indeed, I've seen quite a few manuscripts depicting bycockets being worn backwards, and I was quite impressed when I saw Kingdom Come Deliverance. Not only they have the normal frontways bycocket, they also have backwards bycocket, which I've never really seen in any other medium. Another interesting thing about the bycocket is that it seems to have been worn by both men and women, which is pretty unusual for medieval hats, except in this video I'm kind of cherry-picking the ones that are covered by both genders here. So yes, the bycocket. Another simple one again, but no less fashionable, is the Baguette, or the muffin cap. I've not really heard a clear name for this hat, but it's simply a really long beanie, as you can see here. You make a tall, narrow bag, and you roll up the hem, and you put your head in it. It's pretty easy. I've made this one with linen on the outside and a wool lining, simply because that's the colors I had available, and they look good in contrast, I think. And of course these fabrics were historical. You can put a pin on here to keep it rolled up, or just leave it be. If it's made of stiff felt, instead of flopping, it'll just sort of stay raised up. And there's a lot of depictions with large hats, real tall hats like this, in the manuscripts. And if you make the point just a bit forwards, it's a Phrygian cap. And if you make the bag a little wider and gather it at the hem, it's more like a muffin cap. And begins to look like a chef's hat at this point. I've seen plenty of depictions of it being worn by women to keep their hair up and out of the way. I've also found if you put a bunch of stuff in the bag, you can actually roll it up and you can keep your items secure in your hat. And it's got a considerable larger volume than most modern hats do in that regard. Last, we come to one of the most versatile pieces of headgear in the medieval period. This is the hood. The hood can be worn in a multitude of ways. I'll show you a few of them. I'll start putting it on this way. You can see that this is a pretty obvious way to wear a hood, and if I turn around, you can see the long liripipe hanging down off the peak of the hood. Not all hoods had liripipes, but they get longer towards the late medieval ages. This one actually is quite average, though many could reach the knees or even all the way down to the floor. The mantle here covers the shoulders and the chest, keeping the rain and sun off. I've made it out of wool with a linen lining, and I've put dags here, which are these jaggedy cutout sections on the bottom edge of the head. This is the conventional way of wearing a 14th century hood. If it's particularly windy, I can wrap the liripipe around my forehead, like so. And that's another way of doing it. And now I'll keep the whole garment secure, like this. Alternatively, I can wrap the liripipe around the face hole. That's another way of getting the same result, more or less. Now if I take it off, if I roll up this face hole, and put my head over to this, I have got a chaperon. Some trendsetter in the 14th century decided to wear his hood like that, and boom, immediately it was the next best thing since sliced bread to medieval fashion, at least. By the middle of the 15th century, you see more art depicting hoods like this than you do of them being worn like regular hoods. I can do a few things with liripipe. I can drape it over my shoulder like a scarf here. I could bring it up and pin it in place, or tuck it into the brim, or I could actually have it rolled into the brim in the first place so it's not draping down. So the next time you see a medieval movie or video game character without an incredibly stylish hat, you can point out that they are practically undressed and point them to a number of historical headpieces. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. Godspeed, friends.